All right, so it's super important that we, as profitably as possible, get our goods from point A to point B to our customers, because if we don't get them fulfilled, there is really no sales, and we don't want that, because we want things to get to the customers so they come back to Amazon or wherever it is they're buying. So I'm excited because we have someone on today who we shared the stage with at the recent Surge Summit in Tampa. So we have Manish Chowdhary from Kahoot, who's joining us. So Manish, thank you for joining us on Maximizing E-commerce.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation too, because I feel I'm trying to think of how to articulate what I'm literally feeling right now. And that is, I came to the realization, which maybe some people already realize this, that Amazon switched fairly recently from purely weight-based fulfillment fees to now, what's the word I'm looking for? Volumetric. And volumetric could be you have it in a poly bag and there's space in the poly bag. And so instead of the product being maybe X size, if you have, it goes a little bit beyond that. Even if it's just a poly bag that's going to bend and fold and whatever, they're charging you for that. So now it's increased the fulfillment fees on just about everything that I have. And I've started noticing this in forums and Facebook groups too, people complaining about this. So total side note. So I'm excited to talk about alternate solutions here.
Yeah, I mean, there were actually, believe it or not, Amazon went through 4 pricing changes this year alone.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was that many.
That we are aware of. In fact, probably 5.
Well, they could have snuck one somewhere and
nobody noticed. Actually, I will give you the timeline. February 1, 2022, Amazon announced the previously increased price changes to FBA. They do that every year. And so that went into effect, what carriers call GRI, which is general rate increase. You probably heard FedEx raising their rates by 6.8%. So FBA is no exception to the rule. So they raised their rates on February 1, 2022. Then they claimed inflation is, they had lowest profit or a really bad quarter for Q1. And they came back with a 5% increase, what they call the inflation surcharge on April 28, 2022. And then, as we all know, Kevin, that October 1, which is Q4, storage fee at FBA triples. So from 83 cents to $2.40 per cubic foot per month. It's not an increase, but it is certainly an increase over last year. And then more recently, just a couple of weeks ago, Amazon came up with the first ever peak fulfillment surcharge, which is 6 to 8%, which will go into effect on October 15. So the thing that FBA is the cheapest solution is, sellers got to take a look at their books very closely. And by the way, in addition to these 4, earlier this year, this was, I think, January or February, what you were talking about is Amazon made changes to a small and light program, which used to be primarily based on weight, and now it's called dimensional weight. And they implemented that. So that had a massive impact in terms of fee increases for number of small and light.
And mine's not even small and light. It's never been small and light. So maybe they've expanded that program. And so side note, when this is all over, I'll have to go back and find, because I'm sure there was an announcement, and I'll be honest, I don't read all the announcements from them. Sorry, Amazon. But at the end of the day, they probably gave me the information, but I just didn't check it. So let's go back in time. So you and I were chatting on a bus because we were going out from the hotel where the Surge Summit was. The night before, you and I were on a panel together about shipping and logistics. And we were chatting about your business model, which I thought was pretty unique and interesting. So, and you were telling me a little bit about your background. So before we get into your current business model, let's go back in time and just describe how you got into the whole e-commerce, logistics, shipping, fulfillment world, because it wasn't the same path that I usually hear from people.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Yeah, I've been involved with e-commerce since 1999. I was a student at the University of Bridgeport, Connecticut back then. And that's when I started my first business out of my dorm room at the University of Bridgeport. And somehow, we got involved with e-commerce and I loved it. And we were building custom e-commerce website. And then we built one of the first turnkey e-commerce platforms.
Oh, wow. So just so everybody
Yeah.
understands, this is years before there was ever a Shopify, WooCommerce, BigCommerce. There was nothing, right? There was no out of the box platform other than you wanted to hire a developer.
Right. There was Yahoo. Yahoo was
Right.
the only. Yahoo was what Shopify is today, or what Salesforce Cloud would be. All the top brands, the Adidas of the world, I think, was on Yahoo platform. This was Yahoo was the Google of the day, if you remember.
Okay. Yeah. Back when people would go to Yahoo to look for things, and like, who's Google? Yeah.
So I started building e-commerce website. My background is computer science, and got involved helping someone who this was the first e-commerce platform. Before the word e-commerce platform existed, we used to call it shopping cart software, turnkey shopping cart software that you could, do it yourself, super easy. This is long before Shopify and so on. So that's where I got my start in e-commerce. Since then I've been speaking with merchants, to the same kind of merchants, more or less. Of course, everybody's GMV has ballooned 10 times, 100 times in the last.
Just for the audience who's not familiar, GMV means what?
Gross merchandise value, meaning the amount of sales on the internet.
Okay.
Yeah. It used to be a time when people were, they would check their email once every 2 days, and if they got the sale. And now, of course, we have emails on our phone, which wasn't the case back then.
Oh, yeah. Your phone literally was for calling.
That's
like
right.
Back in the day, like there wasn't even text messages on. It was kind of a novelty that you didn't have to be connected to a cord in your house, or within 20 feet of the cordless phone receiver in your house.
Right,
so you
right.
could like go somewhere else and like call other people, and that was still fairly novel in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
So speaking of this journey where you were pretty early on in some of this, which is kind of fascinating to me. Not kind of, it is fascinating to me. But you were telling me the story of you were starting to notice some patterns in where stuff was shipping from, that maybe there were some inefficiencies in the system. Can you describe that?
Yes.
If I remember correctly.
Great memory, Kevin. That's
I try.
Yeah. So yes, this was during that time. We actually plotted sales data from camera sellers in the US. So I remember vaguely there were about 70 camera sellers, and we plotted the sales data on the map of the US. And of course, products like digital cameras or the world was moving from film, like Kodak films, to digital. And I remember Canon and Nikon were at the top of the game. I remember some products like Canon ELPH, Nikon Coolpix. These two products have stuck with me. They used to be the best sellers, the top sellers. And when we plotted that sales data, there was a fascinating observation that the same item, the same product, was traveling from a seller, say in New York, to a customer in California. At the same exact time, the product was traveling from a seller in California to a customer, say in New Jersey. And that was happening 40% of the time, if I remember correctly.
Got it. So sometimes they're literally, the trucks could be crossing each other, going across the country because there's no FBA fulfillment algorithms.
Well, so, even if there was FBA fulfillment, even FBA hasn't solved this problem, because if you are a seller X selling to and then seller Y in California, but the fundamental macro issue was, why this inefficiency? Why should the same item travel 7,000 miles cross country in two opposite directions? Both sellers lose because they're paying for exorbitant shipping cross country. Both customers lose because they're paying for that. Those were the days there was no such thing as free shipping. Customers paying, and both the customers were waiting 8 to 10 days to get their items, and the environment was suffering at the same time because so much of carbon emission. So net, this was not helping anyone.
Nobody was winning.
Except UPS, FedEx, and I don't know if that's called winning, but nonetheless, that's when I applied for my first US patent and said, this should not be. Because if you think from a macro perspective, that level of inefficiency should not exist, regardless of who sold what to whom. And that is where I built the intellectual property and said, hey, I'm going to create an exchange and optimize e-commerce. Regardless of who sold what to whom, we will, and the way we're going to do it is we are going to reduce the miles that a product travels so that it's cheaper and faster. That was the vision, and that is what translated into Kahoot many years later. And this is long before Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime didn't even exist. In fact, the Amazon Marketplace did not exist. So I had seen that trend that at some point, what's good at the macro level from first principle is always good. And your time will come when the economic incentives align, when this would make sense. So that is the genesis of Kahoot.
Got it. So Kahoot, just so folks who are not familiar, you basically offer something, if forgive me, this could be a horrible analogy, but something, if you took FBA, how they've got fulfillment centers all over, and you mixed it with a third-party logistics company, which most 3PLs have, like, a location. Like maybe they have a location in Miami, or they're located in California, opposite sides of the country. Or sometimes there's one that maybe has a location in Miami, one in Oklahoma, and one in Portland. And so they have 3 locations across the country, so to speak. You're kind of mixing them together to make an FBA out of multiple 3PLs. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah, so Kahoot is a network of fulfillment centers, and fulfillment centers belong to either other sellers who have very efficient operations of their own and high performance metrics. So a seller, let's say a seller who has 50,000 square feet warehouse and has 10, 20, 30,000 square feet of unused space that they're not utilizing, they can come join Kahoot as a fulfillment partner. And for the very first time, they have an opportunity to make money, which the space that's going idle, your rent doesn't change, whether you use half the warehouse or you use the full warehouse, your utilities don't change. So this is such I think, a wonderful idea and option for merchants who have their warehouse to participate in the fulfillment economy. And Kahoot stitches that all together, makes it super duper simple for fulfillment partners to operate. And what's the net benefit to our clients? Our clients are sellers. They get an FBA-like service. For them, all of this is behind the scenes. They're looking for distributed fulfillment so that they can achieve 1-day delivery, 2-day delivery, cost effectively, affordably, and without any penalties for, I will only fulfill this channel and my pricing is this for this channel. No, an order is an order is an order. And we need to help that customer meet their expectations, wherever they sell, wherever they want their inventory to be. And Kahoot intelligently distributes the inventory. And the benefit is it's a lower cost structure by design. And that's where our clients win because they get a high level of service at an affordable price.
Got it. So basically, if I'm understanding correctly, what you're kind of doing is there's warehouses throughout the country that are already operating. They already have space. In most cases, they're not necessarily filling to the exact brim, so to speak. There's other space they might have. And you're giving them a way to monetize that space, which creates some efficiency from a macro perspective. And then at the same time, too, being able to distribute inventory throughout the country for sellers so that they can get it relatively quickly to their customers, as opposed to if they're only in Miami, sure, the East Coast is great. If they're only in California, the West Coast is great. But either way, what about the people in the middle of the country where, it might take longer? So you're helping to solve some of that problem, which is a unique thing there. So help me understand, one of the things I think people might be thinking in their heads is, okay, but if I had something like that, Amazon likes FBA inventory. So, and the customer likes Prime. So what would be the benefit like to the customer and or to the seller to be involved either 100% or probably better said to mix it up a little bit? Because I know people look for backup plans, especially around the holidays coming up.
Yeah, that's a great question, Kevin. Kahoot is channel agnostic. We are the most merchant-centric fulfillment network on the market because we support whatever is most beneficial for the client. If client wants to send some of the inventory to FBA, then Kahoot would gladly support that. In addition to utilizing our network to fulfill other orders. If you think from a seller's perspective, seller does not differentiate that, oh, I need a warehouse for FBA. I need a separate warehouse that's going to send my inventory to Walmart Fulfillment Services. I need a third warehouse to send my wholesale orders. And then I need to now contract with 4 different 3PLs to achieve 2-day delivery across the US. So from a seller's perspective, FBA is not the solution to all their problems, because if you're selling on Shopify, you don't want to pay multi-channel fulfillment rates. I mean, FBA, on one hand, we just heard that FBA is rolling out some new services like Amazon Warehouse and Distribution, and they want to offer long-term storage. And on the very same day, we heard it on Search Summit from the stage from one of the largest sellers that their inventory limits have been slashed to a very, very low number. So, Amazon is a great service, but sellers have to recognize that Amazon does what's best for Amazon. And the sellers need to have a backup option. Is this like a backup hard drive on your computer? You're not going to go around with no backup because things can fail and things do fail. And we've learned repeatedly that Amazon will cut your inventory without limits. And what are you going to do? So Kahoot is a great option to have for every seller, even if they're using FBA. And Kahoot's position is we will support what's best for the merchant, B2B, B2C, and seller fulfill Prime. And those are all 2 opposite ends of the spectrum. And I'm sure you may have questions on seller fulfill Prime, which I can tackle.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, seller fulfilled Prime. That's the part that I think probably just got some people really thinking there. Like, okay, you can still get the Prime badge, but be seller fulfilled. Now, the part that's scary for a lot of people is if Amazon screws up fulfillment, it's their problem. If you take on as the merchant, regardless of you physically putting the boxes as the seller in, and putting labels on them and putting them to the post office, or you hire someone, you as the seller in your account are responsible for it. So, and then seller fulfilled Prime is another level because you can't just say, oh yeah, we'll ship it in 7 to 10 days like you could with other merchant fulfilled options. So what are the requirements for seller fulfilled Prime?
Yeah, seller fulfilled Prime is the gold standard of fulfillment. And Kahoot is one of the very, very few networks that can handle seller fulfilled Prime confidently. In fact, if you went and spoke with the traditional 3PL, they'll flat out tell you no. And you definitely don't want to take a chance because, as you said, the risk is so high, the standards are so high, unforgiving, and I'll explain what that means.
Yes, please explain the unforgiving
standards. Seller fulfilled Prime, you need to have 99.5% on-time shipping. You need to have 2 p.m.
So, okay, hold on. So that means you can only make the mistake 1 out of 200 times.
That's right.
Right? Did I get the math right?
Yes, you got the math right. Yeah. 1 out of 200 orders. You need to ship 6 days a week, which means you got to pick Saturday or Sunday. You need to have a cutoff time of 2 p.m. Same day cutoff time. Means if an order comes in by 2 p.m., you must ship it the same day. Then you need to use Amazon Buy Shipping to purchase all shipping labels. So even if you had the best fulfillment operations, if your technology is not rock solid, you'll get screwed up there.
Mhm.
You don't want to email your shipping labels to your fulfillment partner. That is a bad idea.
Mm.
And now on top of that, where things get really tricky is what Amazon defines as page view metrics. So in order to qualify and remain in good standing for Seller Fulfilled Prime program, every seller must meet 1-day, 2-day delivery page view metrics. And I'll break that down for you.
Okay, yeah. Help me understand what that means.
Meaning Amazon Prime has moved, Seller Fulfilled Prime has long moved from 2-day delivery. 2-day delivery is yesterday's news. In fact, day before yesterday. For Seller Fulfilled Prime, for standard size item, you need to have at least 20% of page views to the consumers on Amazon.com that promise 1-day delivery.
Okay.
In addition to
time out.
Yeah.
How does the page view know whether it's 1 or 2 days? Like, who you have to be communicating that to Amazon that if a customer lives in Tennessee, it's going to be X number of days versus if they live in Utah.
So essentially, that's the reason why you need at least 4 to 5 warehouses. You cannot achieve Seller Fulfilled Prime using a single warehouse if you are shipping using economical ground shipping. So these are all managed through the shipping templates in the Amazon Seller Central. So if you go on Amazon Seller Central, you can go create all your warehouses, and then you create shipping templates. And shipping templates is what informs Amazon and thereby the consumers what to promise to the consumer, the shopper on Amazon.com. So Amazon, of course, as you know, is fanatical about customer experience. So they want 20% of the page views to promise 1-day delivery.
Got it. So 20% of the time someone lands on that page, they're promised 1-day delivery. Now, theoretically, more people are probably in population centers, so that probably helps you a little bit. But you have to make sure that you can do 1-day delivery to a lot of the population centers and things of that nature. So
yeah, it gets tricky.
It does. Tricky. It seems like it sounds like, oh, that's easy enough, but there probably is some threading of the needle there.
It's far from easy. I'll give you an example. So if you have a 2 p.m. cutoff in New York, which is where a lot of people live, right? Meaning that's the same day promise. A customer that's visiting your web page, let's say at 7 p.m., you can't ship that product today. So that automatically means if you're going to ship tomorrow, it will be delivered day after tomorrow. So that 1 day became 2 days.
Got it. Okay.
So you need to have 40%, and this is the crude math, of course, at least 40% of the US population covered within 1-day radius in order to scrape by the Seller Fulfilled Prime account health metrics for standard size item.
Got it. So they're not saying by 2 p.m. you must have 20%. It's total. So if most of your shoppers are shopping at night, you better hope that you have a better chunk of the pre-2 p.m. crowd covered.
Yeah, this is what makes it, but this is where the world is going, and if you're sending, your other orders from other channels and taking 3 days, I mean, you're doing massive disservice. Why is Amazon growing so fast? Why do customers come to Kahoot? Is of course not only for programs like Seller Fulfilled Prime, but once your inventory is distributed in the Kahoot network, then you can offer the same Prime-like shipping promise on your website. Imagine not having to pay 15-20% in commission, and you're building a brand, and because your inventory is already there. And that's where the scales begin to tilt. And by the way, we covered 1-day metric, but there's also 2-day metrics for the rest. And as I said, 6-day shipping, late cutoff, all of these make things very complicated. And that's the reason why traditional players cannot, affordably offer the service without, if for example, if you have to rush the order using next day air, that will erode all your margins for the next 100 orders, possibly.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be crazy. Okay. All right. So let's get into this now. So how did you go from back when either Clinton was still the president or maybe Bush's first term, going basically a long time ago, realizing there was inefficiencies of cameras crossing over each other, going from one end of the country to the other, just based on where the seller was, to coming up with this idea of a fulfillment network?
Yeah, essentially the idea was to create a network that would enable people to collaborate, and in order for merchants to collaborate in some fashion, you need an independent body. That's a governing body. You can't have, without governance, nothing works. You need to have the rules, you need to provide the decorum. It's no different than marketplace like Uber or Airbnb. For the drivers and the riders to collaborate, essentially they're collaborating. On Airbnb, the renters and the hosts are collaborating. It's just, it's just a different service. With Kahoot, it's merchants who are collaborating with other merchants under the Kahoot umbrella, who sets the rules and holds people accountable and so on. And that's what we built the Kahoot network to, essentially, one, enable sellers who have warehouses. There are about 2 million sellers in the US. And if any of the listeners have a warehouse and have spare capacity and they have excellent metrics, I invite them to come check out Kahoot, fill out the contact us form, and we can get in touch with you if you want to join as a fulfillment partner and make some money.
Let's get into your current network. We can get into maybe how someone joins as we get further into this, because I'm just kind of intrigued. So, like, how many warehouses are there currently in the network?
There are multi-dozen warehouses, and that number keeps growing.
Okay.
And so we have a very large network. It's we cover the entire nation in 1 day, 2 day. And so essentially the clients get an FBA-like service. Sellers can deploy their inventory, and we can, if they need FBA assistance, but we're not an FBA forwarding service. If somebody wants just FBA forwarding, then that's not Kahoot. There are a lot of other services that just do FBA forwarding. Kahoot
Got it. Yeah, there's a lot of warehouses for that, but
yeah,
you're doing a specific service of basically getting it closer to the customer, so that when the customer orders on Amazon, they can still get Prime, or they order on Walmart and then get whatever badge it is there, or whatever, Shopify stores, whatever. So it doesn't have to just be Amazon inventory. So this could be either Amazon has become cost prohibitive for the seller for whatever reason, and they need to look into other options. Their inventory was cut back. They just want a second backup, just because, like, right now I can ship in like 15,000 units, and last year at this time I think I had 1,000 units I could send in total.
right.
And so
Right. But
they're all over the place. It keeps
when your
going up and down.
50,000 is going to reduce to 750. You have no
Yeah,
idea.
exactly. It's like I almost like wake up in sweats on Monday morning, like not wearing sweatpants, but like in cold sweats. Like, what is my number going to be this week? Sometimes it goes up by 5,000, and sometimes it goes down by 5,000. And thankfully, I'm never like right on the edge. So anyone that says to me like, "Oh, should I just send all my stuff in Amazon?" I'm like, absolutely not, because they could just cut it, like, and they've done that before, where they get close to the holidays and they're like, "Oh, we're filling up more than we thought we would," so they just cut it off, and now all of a sudden you can't send in the popular stuff that you were hoping to send in. So you got to have something to do, and so hopefully your dining room has a lot of space, but for a lot of people that might not be the case. So all right, so for a seller, let's just say we can use Amazon as an analogy, just because I think most people, probably most of their sales are coming out from Amazon. So, and we're talking about seller fulfilled Prime and things of that nature. So Amazon processes, I go into Sellers Central and I say, here's what I'm sending you, Amazon. Here's the quantities. Where do you want me to send it? And hopefully it all goes to one place. Sometimes they split it up and they say, send it here, and here. Walk me through, what does the process look like if I have, just for the sake of example, 1,000 units I want to send to Kahoot? What happens?
It's the process is very similar to FBA. You'll create an inbound in Kahoot, and Kahoot will guide you through where the inventory needs to be based on your requirements.
Mhm.
Some sellers, don't want to distribute. They're not targeting 2-day delivery for whatever reason.
Mm.
Distributed fulfillment is more expensive than shipping everything from Florida, as you know.
Right.
Because there's a cost of movement of goods and so on. I mean, that's why Amazon, even FBA, charges you more to send your inventory to one location versus sending it to all the different locations that Amazon wants. It's not free, even at FBA. So it's essentially the same network, similar network, but we charge the same low fees for all channels, whether it's an Amazon order, it's a Walmart order, whether it is a Shopify order, eBay. We have all the integrations. So we will connect, we'll get the order, we will optimize to make sure that the right packaging, you're paying the lowest shipping cost possible, and we give you all the visibility once the order is shipped. So and we write the information back to Amazon. So it's a pretty set and forget. It's very similar to just managing your inbounds on Amazon and then watching your order ship.
So if I have 1,000 units, does Kahoot say X number here, X number here, X number there if I want it distributed? Or does Kahoot distribute it around for me as time happens? Like as like one area gets depleted, for example.
It's a collaborative process, because if you're doing Seller Fulfill Prime, we will provide you with more guidance, but you have more control. With Amazon, you have little to no control. Amazon dictates, because Kahoot is doing full service fulfillment. Remember, Kahoot is not just doing Amazon sales. So you may have wholesale orders. You may have stuff that needs to go to FBA. So for us, the problem is a little bit more complicated than just serving the customers on Amazon.com.
Got it. So right now, let's just say you have something on Amazon where it's maybe a little bit under a pound, even with a dimensional weight. Is it a similar fulfillment fee? Is it a little bit more, a little bit less on Kahoot? Like, and where does the cost of the actual storage compare?
Yeah, I mean, Kahoot overall is going to be more cost efficient because when you look at FBA, you got to look at all the fees, right? You got to look at the storage fees. You got to look at the how long it takes for you to receive your inbounds. Even if you and frankly, FBA is very attractive for what I call small and light. FBA fees, undoubtedly are very attractive. So, Kahoot will be very comparable to FBA. And if you have larger products, if you have slightly what Amazon would call standard oversize or oversized items, and that's where, Kahoot rates are going to be dramatically lower. Kahoot overall is very, very affordable, on parity with FBA, but there are a few pockets where FBA, Amazon has its own delivery trucks, whereas Kahoot relies on carriers, third-party carriers like UPS, FedEx, DHL, and all that. So the way we like to educate our clients is to think about, all the different channels you want to sell on, all the different things you need to manage and maintain and so on. And we are there not to replace FBA if that doesn't make sense. We are there to support whatever fulfillment strategy that's best for the seller.
Okay, interesting. So yeah, this is an interesting network that here you are. You saw an inefficiency in the system, so to speak, and you've created a system around it, which helps to essentially give people an alternative to either FBA in general, if maybe they're oversized items and the pricing doesn't make sense with FBA, or they just want an alternative because they can still keep the seller fulfilled badge, knowing that at the holidays you could have like stuff in fulfillment center processing for 2 weeks, and it's just
every seller, including you, Kevin, should have an FBA backup, because otherwise you're putting all your eggs in one basket, and that's never a good idea. Certainly not in Amazon's basket. You want to have a backup so that you can turn it on whenever you think is required, whenever you need it, because you can't send all your inventory to FBA. There are all kinds of delays getting inventory from overseas if it's coming, and almost every seller should be selling on multiple channels. Nobody should limit it to one channel only. So And we know that MCF, multi-channel fulfillment, is more expensive. So why should it be more expensive? If the cost of shipping is the same, is just, so the way we like to think about it is that Kahoot has created the most merchant-friendly fulfillment solution on the market because we're agnostic. We're there to support the seller, help them sell more, help them make more profit. And if we can be part of their journey, it would be great.
Awesome. Now, one thing I think people would be kind of curious about who are sellers that are thinking about going onto this, because, there's Airbnb. I think we've all had great experiences. Uber, we've all had great experiences, but you always hear the horror stories. Like, who are these people? And there's always this bad apple. So like, what does it take? Just either if someone's interested in potentially because they have a warehouse and maybe joining a network like Kahoot, or they are a seller and they're just like, who are these people that are going to be storing my inventory? Kind of walk us through, what does that look like? How does someone get onboarded? What do you look for in a fulfillment partner? And what are they held to?
Thank you. That's a great question, Kevin. Becoming a Kahoot fulfillment partner is a by invitation only program. So even if you went to our website, you may not find, because we have to be very selective in who we allow a fulfillment partner, because as you heard, supporting seller fulfilled prime is playing with fire. It's not for the faint of heart. So we need to ensure that we are selecting these partners very carefully. There are 2 million sellers out there in the US, many million globally. So we invite them to come submit, contact us. We will get in touch with you. Kahoot does a lot of due diligence to make sure that the program is the right fit for them. We are and they're the right fit for us. If they have excess capacity and they're doing a great job of fulfillment for themselves, they should consider applying, because there's more than one way to make money. One is to sell more goods, and the second is to fulfill. You're already fulfilling orders, might as well just to fulfill a few more. And I think that's a great way to make extra cash. And it's super duper simple. So from a horror stories, it's really some things that are within Kahoot and our fulfillment partners' control. Some are not, like, inclement weather, right? That happens. I live close to New York. We get snowstorms here. Just yesterday, there was a hurricane in Florida, which,
as we're recording it, it hasn't even made land yet. In fact, last night I was dodging tornado. I happen to be on the East Coast. This is on the West Coast, so I'm very familiar with what you're talking about. So we're lucky to be even having this conversation that I have internet right now. Anyway, sorry, side note. But yeah, stuff happens.
So carriers sometimes may have difficulty picking up. When the pandemic hit, carriers were completely chock-a-block. They had no space in their trucks. So, if you suddenly, ran a special sale and instead of getting 10 orders a day and you got 1,000 orders, FedEx does not, their space doesn't have elastic capacity that they can elongate by a click of a button, or manufacture trucks digitally. So those are real world physical challenges that we deal with. Those are things that planning for capacity, but our fulfillment partners have been great. They have always stood their ground, and they have delivered. So, generally speaking, most of the problems that we've seen have been outside our control. And we speak with our fulfillment partners regularly. So it's not just a digital platform that you have no connection, human connection, whether it is staffing. People do fall sick. During the pandemic, we had people in the warehouse that had COVID. They had to be isolated. These are FBA shut down several warehouses during that time. So all the same challenges. It is about great governance, clear expectations, good communication, and great technology and system. From a technology standpoint, we often encounter bugs or issues with buy shipping, but we have to use buy shipping for prime orders to get the label. So, our technology has to be resilient to deal with those challenges. Like sometimes it's an inconvenience. Let's say buy shipping is not returning the economy ground shipping method because it's only returning expensive 2-day air label. So that costs our sellers money, and we are very sensitive to that. However, it's also important to protect the account, those metrics, because in order to save $20, if the account is endangered, if the health of the account, that is going to be a far more expensive problem than $20.
True, because if you get 1 out of 200 that you get a grace on.
So those are the problems that we've seen, but our technology is resilient. Our fulfillment partners are awesome, and we've been very fortunate that way, and we want to keep it that way.
Awesome. So if somebody wanted to learn more, either as a seller or potentially if they're had a warehouse, where would they go?
Go to www.kahoot.ai. If you're interested in either availing of Kahoot's affordable fulfillment services, just fill out the contact us form. There's also live chat option. If you're looking to join as a fulfillment partner, we are glad to have you. We'd love to invite you. Just fill out the contact us form, and then a representative or fulfillment expert will be in touch, and we will determine if we are the right fit. But we're here to help our customers. If we can add value, that's what we like to see.
Awesome. And spell Kahoot just for folks who are not familiar.
Yeah, Kahoot is a play. How Slack. When you're using Slack at work, it's you're in Kahoot. Kahoots. So CAHOOT.ai. It's singular. Kahoot.ai is the URL. You can check us out, and if there's any questions we can answer for them, we'll be happy to.
Awesome. If you're listening to the audio podcast, that'll be in the show notes. And if you're listening or watching on YouTube, it'll be in the description down below. So Manish, this was an interesting conversation, and fascinated with what you've built here. So thank you so much for coming on.
Kevin, thank you so much for having me. And thank you to all your listeners for listening to me. And if Kahoot can be of help, please just check us out. And we'd love to chat and share notes. And we learn as much from sellers as much as we have to share, our expertise with them. So I always enjoy those conversations.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.